All right, next up, we have uh, Mate Sone, or Math, or AKA Scooby, presenting on full circle detection, from hunting to actionable detection. What I found, or what I was fascinating looking over his bio, was he mentioned mentoring, which I think is something that is so important in our industry. As you can see by attending these conferences, there is so much to learn, so many different directions you can go in the industry, and so many different things that you can do. Having a mentor in the field to kind of guide you through that process, to talk about things, what you should do next, is so important. And I just thought that was really awesome, his level of involvement in that. So he's going to be talking about the full circle detection. I love this presentation because it incorporates these real world examples and how you can make this information actionable. And then he will also talk about, how you can share that with the community. And community is such an important thing, and something I know I've touched on a couple of times throughout today. But definitely, when we learn something, sharing it with the community so that we can all benefit from it, I think is just awesome. Another point I thought was interesting was this concept of trust but verify. I also saw that where, sometimes we might find something, a rule or a tool, but as examiners, we do need to test these tools, make sure that they're working, because ultimately we are where the buck stops, right? So Scooby, Math, I am going to go ahead and turn it over to you.
Awesome. So welcome, SANS family. This is a talk called Full Circle Detection, from hunting to actionable data. So the idea of this talk is a little bit less about pure hunting, like the two previous sessions that we just listened to. And it's more about what to do with those awesome tips that you're going to get throughout this summit. So let's go over who I am. My name is Mathieu Saunier. I'm a technical director of advanced security at Syntax. We are a managed ERP provider, and we also provide security services on top of our hosting environment. As mentioned, I'm a core mentor of the Blue Team Village. I specialize in threat hunting and adversary detection. Whenever I present detection stuff, I say that I specialize in threat hunting. And whenever I'm at the threat hunting summit, I say that I'm more adversary detection. I love giving talks, and I had the honor to do so at DerbyCon, DEF CON Blue Team Village, NordSec, Sector, a few B-sides, and now this year at SANS as well. You can find me on Twitter at ScoobyMTL. If you have any questions, I'll also hang out in many different Slack, and I go by the handle of Scooby. I think that's how I'm mostly known in the community. So here's what we're going to talk about. So first of all, it all starts with an idea, or as we call it in threat hunting, an hypothesis. Then we're going to try to generate some events around our idea to validate things. Then we're going to build detection based on what we found. Then we're going to share, we want to share the detection because sharing is caring, right? And then we're going to integrate that into some type of continuous testing to make sure that our some detection are always working. Then we're going to build some incident response playbook. And finally, we're going to train our analysts and the rest of our team. And we're going to go through these different steps throughout this presentation. So first of all, I wanted to show you this slides where I put most of the most of the things that works together, usually when you have a SOC or a security team. And you can see that I put threat hunting at the bottom here. And this is mostly representative about threat hunting. So there will be some things missing, but basically when threat hunting detects an incident, it should be kicked to the incident response. If you have a big team, this is sometimes two very different teams. If you have a smaller team, sometimes it's almost the same person, but it's just important that it's a new process. It's not the exact same process as the threat hunting itself. Then your threat hunting will also feed your vulnerability management if some misconfiguration are found or some vulnerabilities that have been taken advantage of by the adversary. And also, whenever you do find some effective query in your hunting, you should think about converting them into detection. And then there's other things also that feeds into threat hunting. Of course, if you have an offensive security, they'll provide some TTPs that your threat hunting can look for. And same thing, if you have a dedicated threat intel team, they can go and feed that. Just for the sake of more completeness, I've added the other arrow here, but I know there's a few missing because most of these things, they're all talking together. So when I see people showing just one little thing with its own little wheel process, I feel that there's something missing and they're not seeing the big picture. And that's what this talk is all about. Is actually, I'm pretty sure you've heard almost everything I will talk about today, but I've never seen any other talk put them all together in one presentation. So this presentation is Venom Team, and these full slide picture are here solely so I can drink a sip of water unnoticed. So let's start with the idea or the hypothesis. In this case, there's a ton of places where you can get ideas for detection. My personal favorite is Twitter. Some people say that there's a lot of drama on Twitter, and I would argue that it really depends on who you are following and how many people you are following. So I personally prefer to keep my circle smaller, and whenever a great information is released, someone else will share it. MITRE ATT&CK is, of course, always very talked about. They have all of these cool tactics, techniques, and procedures, so you can go and dig in and find some information about what you could or should hunt for. And of course, there's a lot of Slack community, for example, the Bloodhound Slack and the Threat Hunting Slack. If you want invitation for those, let me know. I can send links to you. Now, also a lot of community have moved from Slack to Discord, and here are 3 good Discord that all have threat hunting channels. So Trusted Sec, Black Hills Information Security, and of course, DEF CON Blue Team Village. Now, there's also a lot of InfoSec news website that you can get information from. And if you might be lucky and have your own threat intel team in-house, or maybe you're buying some threat intel feed from your EDR vendor, for example, or your trusted security vendor. The idea in this talk is to start with an article from MDSec that is almost a year old now, and it's called A Fresh Outlook on Mail-Based Persistence. Here is the article link if you haven't read it already. The TLDR of the article, if you haven't read it or if you don't remember, is that you can create macro as a user and use Outlook as a C2. So basically the idea is each time that you receive an email with a specific keywords, your macro will delete that email and then execute some command. For example, opening a reverse shell or creating a scheduled task, pulling a file, pretty much anything you can actually think of. Here is how it's done. It's in a file called vba-project.otm, and we will use that quite a lot during the talk, this file name. As you can see towards the end of the slides here, there's 2 if, and the second if says that if the subject is MDSec, then it pops up a message box that says hack the planet, and it runs in the shell calc.exe. So nothing too fancy here, but still pretty effective if you want to test something. Because MDSec are such great folks, they include detection in all, if not, well, most, if not all of their blog. And in this case, they talk about Sysmon ID 11 and Sysmon ID 12. If you're not using Sysmon in your environment, you don't need to leave this presentation right now. You can get these information with any good EDR or even with the native Windows event log. So the first one here is the creation or modification of the file we talked about in the Microsoft Outlook VBA project.etm file. And the second one is a registry key that allows to run macros without any warning, depending on the value that it's set to, or we can actually even disable that. So what we did internally is what I called group hunt, and some people call it hunt expedition. So two different buzzwords, I guess, to describe the same idea, just like the keynote was talking about at the beginning. But basically what we do at Syntax is that we book every second week 1 hour for sharing and learning together. And in this one, I took the lead, and I made all the team read the article, and then we set up and start looking for the artifacts. We hopefully, or we were happy that we didn't find anything, but we wanted to make sure that our EDRs and our CM could pick up those activities. So we started planting evidence. So we modified the registry on one of our test system, and then we edited the VBA project file .otm, sorry, and we just copy paste the code from the article. And then we sent an email on that system, and well, calc was actually popped. So now we could hunt again and make sure that we could catch all of the different steps of this attack. And now we also talked with our EDR vendor to make sure that they would monitor those files, because it did work flawlessly in our environment at the beginning. Again, this was like a year ago, so things have changed greatly since then. So everyone also, I think everyone in this hunt expedition or on group hunt learned something. I, for myself, was new to the team, so the set of tools that Syntax is using was different from the tool that I was used before. So I learned a lot about the query language and this type of things. Now, when you do these things, did you find any event in your environment? Hopefully not, but if you did, especially in this case, it's very low false positive rate and very high accuracy. And you cannot go and create those files every time you want to test if your detection is working, or if you want to make a hunt to make sure that you have the right telemetry. Can we easily generate events or attack events? Where that's where the Atomic Red Team project comes into play. And here's the link of that project if you don't know it. It's from Red Canary, and it's a highly portable file. It's YAML file, and you create tests, so you can interact with the shell directly from the YAML, and you put the command that you want, and go a little bit more in detail. How do you actually build an Atomic Red Team test? Well, here is one that was already there when we built the one that we're going to talk about today. So we can see here that it's also about Office application startup. And towards the end, you see all the metadata. But towards the end of the file, you see the command that is run, and you see the cleanup command. And here is what we built. So we can see here that we changed the metadata. Of course, we said that this idea was from the MDSec blog post. And then towards the end here, we can see our command. So the first command, we add a registry key to be able to run the macro. In the second part, we make the directory Microsoft Outlook, echo Atomic Red Team test in the VBA project.otm file. In this case, we don't really care if the file works or not. We're not trying to do the exploitation of the attack. We're just trying to make sure that we can see whenever this file is created in our environment. Now, as you can see just below that, there is the cleanup command right here. And that's why we highly recommend that you do not run Atomic Red Team on production systems, because here it blindly delete the key, the registry key, and it also blindly delete the VBA project OTM file. So if you had put the security to disable all of the macro, well, that would remove that from your configuration on your system. So that might make your system more vulnerable. Same thing for the other file. If this is a personal computer, of someone that actually use some macro. I think it's very rare, but we never know. They might be not so happy that this file disappeared and that all of their automation is gone. Now it's time, now that we have queries that actually find our events, it's time to convert the hunt into detection. Not all hunts are worthy of detection, though. And this is kind of following the Google hunt once mantra. You don't want to redo the same hunts over and over and over again. We want to use your hunter, which are probably some very skilled people in your organization. And I'm not talking about their experience here. I'm just talking about usually their skills. Threat hunter are usually the people who are very intuitive people with a lot of ideas. So you want to use them to create new ideas, to hunt for new things, and not always hunt for the exact same thing. So that's when, if you have a big team, you would probably send your basic hunting query to your detection engineering team, and they would refine and optimize the query. And then, depending on the verbosity of the alert or the detection, you could choose to alert, so creating a ticket, or go more with the report or dashboard approach, where you can review that either on a daily basis or maybe in a weekly basis, or even if it's not that important, on a monthly basis. But it's all depending on the output and how serious the hunting is. Now that you have your detection, it's now time to share your detection with the community. And here again, there's a very awesome public framework. Sorry, I got distracted by the drawing. And it's called Sigma. And I've talked about Sigma in many other talks. So hopefully most of you know what it is. In the case you don't know, these are generic CM rules that can be ported to a very wide type, to a lot of different CMs, sorry. So we can share the detection logic, but usually when you do that, you would share the known OS exclusion, but not org specific exclusion. What I mean by that is, for example, if you're creating a detection for bits admin, well, we know that Windows does use bits admin in its normal usage. So you can whitelist these and put those whitelists in your detection. On the other end, if you have an internal tool that uses bits admin, those is probably some things that you don't want to share. And I heard this a lot of times. We don't want to share because this is our intellectual property. This is what sets us apart from the competition. I don't really agree with that mentality. In fact, in this case of the MDSec thing, the detection was already there in the article. So if it's anyone's intellectual property, it's MDSec. The only thing that you're doing by building that detection and sharing it with the community is actually give more time for another team to work on something else, right? Instead of all building the same detection for the exact same technique. And personally, I would be a lot more inclined when I'm choosing a security partner to go with one that opens his knowledge and you can know how good they are, compared to a person or a vendor that said, oh, we have a lot of cyber, blockchain, AI stuff, and it's all state of the art, blah, 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 but you never know exactly what they're doing. Or maybe actually you do know exactly what they're doing. So creating a Sigma rule is not really different from creating an atomic red team. So here we have the existing rule and our new rule just beside it. And as you can see, they are extremely similar. On this slide, you can see it a little bit better. And this one is how we create the C2 registry key. And to build these, it took me about 10 minutes. Part was actually to understand how to generate the unique ID on top here, and I actually had to read the manual. Can you imagine reading the manual to do something? And yet I had time to, it took me like 10 minutes. So you have a few tags here at the top. link to the attack framework, of course, the date that it was built, and the category that you can see just here. So here is a registry event on Windows, and then just below you have the exact registry key and the value that you set in your detection. Now it's the second rule, and again, we based our new rule on the old rule, or an existing rule rather. The first one is looking for the file creation of debug bin when you run safety cats. In our case, I'm going to make it a little bit bigger here. We are looking for the Microsoft Outlook VBA.otm. And building these detection and testing them actually allowed us to realize that there was a typo in the MDSec blog. So the path that they're giving is actually wrong. And this is something important to know. And maybe a pro tip here is that when you want to build a detection, just don't blindly use what's in the blog. Always test it, because mistakes happen, typos, and you might have a false sense of security thinking that you are covered when actually you're looking in the wrong direction, or in the wrong directory rather in this case. If you want to know more about how to build a Sigma rule, Chris Sanders and Joss Brower from Active Network Defense build this 2-pager on building that, and they also have a complete course on their platform about that. I didn't take the course, but I just thought it would be interesting to mention for people who are really interested in diving in Sigma. Now, another little pro tip, there's the Uncoder.io website where you can go and paste your Sigma rules, or any Sigma rules for that matter, and then it can convert it to your SIEM. As you can see here on the screenshot, there's Elastic Query, QRadar, Splunk, but there's a lot of other format. For example, ArcSight is in there, ElastAlert, yeah, there's a lot more, but I don't remember them on the top of my head. But most of the SIEM are there. So very useful little site. Now that you have a detection, that you've shared it with the community, time to build a pipeline, a detection pipeline. So you want to make sure that your new and shiny detection is actually working. It happened way too often in my career that the detection stopped working. There's several reasons for that. There might be a new version of OS deployed in your environment. There might be new software, new version of software, or new software that change things. There might be a new parser. The vendor might have changed the name of the field or the mapping. All of those things will break your detection. We put a lot of effort and pride in building those detection, so we want to make sure that they're working. So all the way from generating the event to getting the alert for our analyst. So easy way to do that is to run your Atomic Red team very often, maybe daily if you can, or at least weekly. The easiest way to do that is to use scheduled task on Windows or cron on Linux. If a bit more advanced, maybe you can use some Docker and some real CI/CD pipeline. You should always put the source system in an allow or ignore list, depending on how we work, so it doesn't send ticket to your analyst. And you should also use, if you want to test the creation of a ticket, so you should send it to a test ticket queue where your analysts are not seeing it. And you only create a ticket if that test ticket doesn't appear, or if the numbers, if you know that you're launching 35 Atomic Red teams, you should get 35 detection. And if you get 34 tickets in your test queue, then you know that one is broken and you can generate a ticket for your SOC. Just this morning, I came across this blog post here, and that's a tool that is called Automata that does pretty much this. So it automates the detection pipeline. Of course, I haven't used it. I just read about it this morning, but I thought it would be a very nice addition to this talk. Now it's time to talk about the incident response playbook. So many people have different definition of a playbook, and here's the one that I'm going to use in this presentation. So for me, a playbook is a process for your SOC analyst. In this case, it would be business email compromise, or BEC for short, that we often hear in the industry. I'm going to go over two open frameworks for incident response playbook. The first is React by the ATC project, and the second one is our own from Syntax that was released in July at the SANS DFIR Summit. And here's the link if you want to have a look at it. I'm going to go over both of them very quickly. The first one from React is extremely modular. It is open source. It's a framework. So you can think about it as Lego blocks that you can pick and build your perfect incident response playbook with. Right now, it's still pretty much a work in progress. And what I mean by that is if you look at this screenshot, you will see that for remove registry, they don't really tell you how you remove a registry. It's just kind of a placeholder. Some of them are more detailed, but a lot of them are still at that level where you have the name, but not much more information. Now, here's the Syntax playbook, what they look like. Well, they are hosted on Git, as we mentioned. They are built in Markdown, and all of the workflow are draw.io. And that's, I think, the real strength of our model, is that we built workflow with the information behind to give more information about what goes into that step or that little process box there. It's open, it's free, it's easy to modify, and I really hope that someday it will become the Atomic Red Team or the Sigma for incident response. If you want more information about these, I invite you to go watch the talk that was presented at SANS DFIR Summit last July. Now, training, because it's not because you or your threat hunter have mastered these new things, this new detection, this new attack, this new TTP would be the right term, I believe here, that all of your team does, especially your analysts that might be focused on answering like extinguishing fire on a day-to-day basis. Maybe they don't have time to go through all of this process with you. So it's time to share that knowledge that you've built and share it with your team. So it needs to be easy to consume. I really love video. As you can see, I love talking. So for me, video is a natural medium. It's also how I personally learn more by hearing people than just reading stuff. But for other people, you can have PowerPoints or you can have wiki, and your wiki can be built in with your incident response playbook. And if you want to have a nice framework, I invite you to look at the ADS framework from the folks at Palantir. This is pretty complete package for documenting your detection, and you can link everything. It's also Markdown based, or it's easy to build in Markdown, so everything can be in one nice package. Because let's face it, if you send this alert today to one of your level 1 or someone who just joined your team 3 or 4 weeks ago, and they see an OTM file, VBA project.otm file being written to disk, it will probably not ring a bell to them. Like, let's be honest, I don't think this is widely spread knowledge. Like if you see Mimikatz running in your environment, then I think everybody knows what it is. But VBA project.otm, that's a little bit more obscure or niche. Now we're almost, sorry, almost at the end of our talk, but the bonus thing here is automate as much as possible. So we use a SOAR, security, orchestration, automation, and response. Here are 2 software that exist that are open source. I haven't tested them, but I put them here for you to review: Shuffle and Walkoff. And the type of things that you want to automate first are things that you do every single day. For example, validating a hash on VirusTotal. You should not have to do that every single time you come across an hash or a file name. Same thing with your threat intelligence. Maybe you want to verify against gray noise or spam house when you have an email or a SMTP server that you are investigating. All of those things should become automated. But it's already the end of the talk. And I really like this image because for me, it represents how we, the defender, can stand up to the red team and the adversary if we unite. We are bigger, we far outnumber them, but yet in most cases, I feel that we're always trying to catch up with them. And for me, it's obvious that red teamers share a lot more than blue teamers. They share tradecraft, they share TTP, they share tools, they share C2. And we, the defender, we tend not to share as much, or maybe in a less organized way. So this is my call to you, the community, to start sharing more, to leverage projects that already exist. And if your enterprise doesn't really allow you to share, maybe you could discuss with them sharing anonymously, using some handles or using some other names that are not related even to you, your persona, or your company. So my name is Mathieu Saunier. You can find me on Twitter at ScoobyMTL. I want to thank SANS for having me today and all of you who took the time to listen to this presentation. Thank you very much.
Matt, thank you so much for your presentation. Wanted to just take a couple of minutes and go over some questions and comments. I saw, not said. One, everybody loves your shirt, Enable MFA, but I think if you did that, like I would have a lot less work. So I kind of have mixed feelings about that, right?
It's written here very dark. I don't show you it, but it says your password doesn't matter.
Ah, okay. Nice. Yep. I see the Enable MFA, but not the other lines. So a question. So we had some questions come in through the Slack channel. One of them was, how do you handle the version control on the Sigma rules?
I believe this is already built in over there. I'm not a Sigma maintainer, so I don't have the exact answer for that, but I know I know they have a CI/CD pipeline. When you submit something, it goes through some validation before it's put online. But purely version control, I don't have the answer.
Gotcha. And you had mentioned that it took 10 minutes or so, you had to check the manual on how to generate that ID. Was it quick to generate once you found that information? Or I was like, that was...
Yeah, after that, it was just a click of a button, right? It's a web page and you just click generate. So for the 4 or 3 or 4 that were built during this engagement, it was just refresh the button 3 times. So extremely easy to generate.
Nice. Okay. Just a little difficult maybe to initially find out how to do it.
I mean, you just need to read the document.
Read the manual, right?
The famous manual.
Right. Yeah. Did you read the manual? The big help button I put right on the program there for you.
Exactly.
Would you share Sigma detections over social media like Twitter, or is there a specific place for the detection sharing? And you may have covered this, but...
well, Sigma is the place, right? Basically, you put them there and they are automatically shared with the community. But if you want to emphasize that, yes, you have created the new rules, then yes, by all means, go in your favorite social media and post it and let the magic happen. It's going to spread. And if it's something that is really useful or really in the news, it's going to spread very fast. Like if I'm thinking about Pitspotam or all of these vulnerabilities that we had, I believe in July, where we had like a million, not millions, but almost 1 new critical vulnerability every single week. These detection, they need to be shared, and Sigma is the perfect place to do it.